is colour? If we could have the lights down now, that would be great. Thank you very much. Yeah, so what is colour? Why, when I shine a yellow light at that blue plate, has it gone black and not green? Well, it's all down to these ribbons of colour. But you're not getting to play with those yet. No, you've got to have a bit of history first. So, the date is 1671. Actually, we could just have them up a little bit at this point. Bear with us while we just do that. That's lovely. The date is 1671. And Sir Isaac Newton is in his lab playing with his prism. And that's not a euphemism. No, I have one here. And what he discovered that day was that if you shine white light through a prism, you get white light coming through, certainly, but you also get a whole range of colours. Now, Newton called that collection of colours the spectrum, which is the Latin word for appearance or image or apparition. If you look at that tree up there, it's a bit of an apparition. That was actually photographed through the prism. Take a closer look, and you can see all the colours of the spectrum there. Now, Newton split his colours into 7 colour categories. So we've got 7 colour categories, which of course are red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. But you might wonder, why 7? Well, back then, 7 was a magical number that connected all things. There were 7 days of the week, 7 musical notes, and at the time, 7 known objects in the solar system. So there just had to be 7 colours. But Newton discovered something else as well. He also discovered that just as white light could be separated into the range of colours, so that range of colours could come together and create white light. And then he found you didn't need all those colours. You only needed 3, red, green, and blue. Those are the primary colours of light which create white. Unlike this paint wheel. Now, if I spin this really, really fast, you do not get white. You get a sort of murky, browny, purpley colour, and I get repetitive strain syndrome on my arm. But with red, green, and blue light, you can create any colour you want. Now we get to play with the ribbons. So here we go. If I take my little bit of magic wand here, you've got red, green, blue. If I hold that up, you can see that together they create white. But what happens if I take a colour away? Here, there's no green, so it's just red and blue. And you get magenta. Now, magenta and green are complementary colours. That doesn't mean that magenta's going, wow, green, you look absolutely gorgeous today. Well, thank you very much, magenta, you look pretty marvellous yourself. No, what it means is that they're opposite colours. So moving along, back to white. Then you've got blue and green. Red is gone. That creates cyan. Back to white. And then finally, we take away blue, and you're left with red and green, which create yellow. And that always foils everybody, that one. So blue and yellow are complementary colours, as are red and cyan. So let's just go back to that plate. You see, light is either absorbed or reflected. And it's a reflected light that we see. So if I put that white piece of card there, you've got white light shining onto it. Well, of course, I say white light. It's red, green, and blue, but the combination forms white. And you've got white light reflecting back, which is why you see white. No light is being absorbed. If I shine it onto the plate, you've got, oops, let's put that one down there. You've got white light shining onto the plate. Now, This time, the red and green are absorbed, and the blue is reflected back. With the yellow napkin, it's the other way round. The blue is absorbed, and the green and red are reflected back as yellow. But what happens when, we should just switch the ribbons off, what happens when I change to yellow? If I could have the lights down again, please, guys. Thank you very much. Right, so there it is on white. What happens when I change to yellow? Now remember, yellow light is made out of red and green. There's no blue. Well, the napkin hasn't changed at all. That is still yellow. That's still reflecting back the red and green light. There's no blue to be absorbed, but that doesn't matter. But it does with the plate, because now the red and green are being absorbed, and there's no blue there to reflect back. So there's nothing, so you're left with black. But you can start having a bit of fun now. Right, that colour wheel. Some of you might have realised that in actual fact, the primary colours of paint are, of course, red, blue and yellow, not green. But there's a reason I painted it that. And that's because I'm going to do this with red, green, blue. You effectively animate the wheel. You can see the difference on the plate up above as well. So moving on from that, you can start having fun with other colours. Here we've got a whole range. I've had great fun buying this lot. So we'll start off with some red and green and blue. Have a look at the basket as well, how that changes, as well as the squiggly things and the flowers. And then just some random colours. Quite fun, quite interesting. And then finally, we're back to complementary colours. Now, I have been raiding my wardrobe. Admittedly, I don't normally put these together, but it's a cyan dress, it's a red jacket. Take note of the black tie that's wrapped in red as well. And you might like to take note of the face as well, because what I'm now going to do is just switch between red and cyan. And you get a complete change in tones and blinked out. So we can have the lights up now, guys, please. Thanks. Thank you very much. So the colour that shines onto an object actually affects the colour of that object. Not to mention the way it actually looks, because it changed the way they looked as well. Right. I'm just going to come back here. Whoop. Actually, you needn't have them up quite as much. You can just bring them. I'm the awkward one. Whoops. Right. So, Archie Rondell. It's one of 23 round towers around the coast of Jersey, built in the late 1700s, and that is exactly how you'd expect to see it in the daytime and at night time. But I do have to own up, I did have to computer manipulate the nighttime one. Because if I hadn't, it would look like that. And that's not taken with a flash, that's just under moonlight. If I enlarge it, up above the tree, you've got the plough. In the stars, you can probably see that formation. And then in the distance, you've got the French coast. That's lights on the French coast at about midnight. 17 miles away, about 27 kilometres for those in new money. So how comes then that at night time, our eyes see the world completely different to a camera? Well, a camera uses electronic chip to record an image, and of course in the olden days we used film, but either way they have the same response to colour. Admittedly, if it's a low light condition, you've got to have a longer exposure, which means you might get some side effects like increased grain size or some visual noise, but the colour is still recorded. Unlike our eyes have got two receptors, and one works brilliantly under daylight, and that one records in colour, whereas the other one works very well in low light conditions, but that only records in black and white. And here they are. Now, the colour seeing receptors are the cone-shaped ones over there, which curiously enough are actually called cones. And then the black and white receptor, the low light receptor, is that rod-shaped one, and you've probably guessed what that's called. It's a rod. Now, there are 6 to 7 million cones in the back of your eye and 120 million rods. But there's only one type of rod, and it only sees black and white, whereas there are 3 types of cone, and they see 3 different colours, and they are red, green, and blue. We're back to those primary colours of light again. Sometimes your cones don't work properly, and that's when you're colourblind. That would be red colour blindness. Sometimes you don't get the green ones working properly. There is a rare condition called rod monochromacy, where the cones don't work at all, and then you only see in black and white. But, and if we could just have the lights down again, please, guys. Assuming that your, assuming that your cones are working, or at least most of them working, then the following is true. The brighter the light on a subject, the more vibrant the colour. Whereas, you're going to love me because I'm just going to dash off the stage. Whoops, sorry, I'm just going to blind you. Whereas the duller the light on the subject, the more subdued the colours are. And that does make a difference if you've gone to see these. If you've gone to see these, which are the Northern Lights. Now, they really did look like that at the time. They were incredible. And to the naked eye, they're absolutely amazing. But they look like that just the once. Most of the time, they look like that. And you were looking out the back of the boat thinking, now, is that a cloud, or is it some sort of steam from the boat funnel? Because you see, weak northern lights, low light conditions, only your rods are working, they look black and white. The only way we could actually tell whether or not they were cones, whether or not they were northern lights, was to take a photograph. Okay, lights can go up a little bit now, thanks. So, from green light to green squares. Now, one of those squares is different. And if you were a member of the Himba tribe of North Namibia, you already would have picked it out. However, you'd have had a problem picking out that one. And it's all to do with how they categorize their color. Now, Newton had 7 color categories. In actual fact, we now have 11. But the Himba, they only have 5. And they are Serendu, which are their warm colors. There's Zuzu, which are a whole range of their dark colors. Sorry, Zuzu. Vapor, which is whites and yellows. Then there's Buru, which are their blues and greens. And Dambu, the last one, which are greens and reds. So their greens actually fall into 2 completely separate color categories. So when they looked at that one, when they looked at that one, that square there is Dambu, and all the rest are Buru. Now, you may or may not be able to see, it's a bit difficult to see the difference there. You might vaguely see that. That's a whole load of Buru squares on a Dambu background. But the reason they had difficulty seeing this is because they all fall into the category of Buru. It's all the blue-greens. So the way colours are categorized actually changes the way you interpret colours. Colours that are in different colour categories are easier to distinguish compared to colours that actually fall into the same colour category. And language plays a role too. You see, as soon as you start learning to comprehend words as a toddler, the processing of colour actually changes from the visual right-hand side of the brain, which is where you think it would be, to the linguistic left-hand side of your brain. Now, in Japan, they used to have one word that covered blue and green, and then in the early 1900s, colouring crayons were introduced, And they had separate blues and greens, so the Japanese had to invent a word for green. Now, nowadays, they do have separate words for blue and green. However, in Japan, that traffic light is on blue. And when they go shopping to get their veggies, they're going off to get their blues. But don't think that English is any less confusing, because I've got a whole range of colours up there. And just think to yourself what those colours might be. Because what you'd actually call them when you see them in context is this: red, white, red, white, brown, pink, white, black, white, red, red, and the last one, golden. And why? Well, that first one is a red-headed white woman. Or the first two, I should say, is a red-headed white woman. On from that, that is a robin redbreast. The following two I find quite amusing because it's a white coffee in a brown cup and saucer. The middle one, we're in Jersey, so I had to include pink granite. The next two, white grapes, black grapes. And that one, which might be hidden, is, in fact, white wine. And then to end up with those three there are a red squirrel, a red setter, and a golden cocker spaniel that happens to be pushed by that same red-headed white woman that you saw earlier. Admittedly, that photo has faded a little bit because it is older. I was working out it must be at least 25 years old. So, look, I did say at least, okay? So, to summarize, the light shining on an object affects the way that we see and perceive that object, or the color of the light shining on the object. Rods and cones also play their part, as does language and how we categorize colors. Now, I was asked once, why, if there are 11 categories of color, are there 50 shades of gray? It didn't take me long. I replied quite quickly, well, of course, you only need your rods for those. Whoops. Yeah, only need your rods. That's a grey, sorry. Only need your rods for those. Right. Now, there is actually far, far more that I could talk about, but we don't physically have the time. So I want to leave you with an experience. I want everybody to close one eye or cover one eye, okay? And you're going to look at this green square. If we could have all the lights down at this point, please. And you're going to stare at that green square while I tell you what is happening inside your brain. Because when I started taking photos last millennium, there were different types of film. There was daylight film for outside where the light is bluer, and there was tungsten film for indoors where the light is a lot more yellow. Because film couldn't do what your brain is trying to do at the moment, which is make compensations for color. You see, every time you walk from an artificially lit room indoors to outdoors into the sunlight or vice versa, your brain makes compensations for that color. It's learned over time what white should look like, and therefore it adjusts so that white looks like white. Effectively, it's got an automatic white light balance. Now, in a moment, not quite yet, but in a moment, I'm going to put a white slide up there, and when I do, you're to flick from one eye to the other, a wink from one eye to the other. Okay, I'm going to count you in. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Wink away. One eye to the other. Okay, and you should see a difference. Because what should have happened is that should look rose-coloured now. I should have rose-tinted your world. And of course, rose is magenta. Magenta is a complementary colour to green. So your brain has tried to compensate for that green by making the world look more magenta. Literally, within 30 seconds, it'll be back to normal again. So your brain alters the way you perceive colour too, which really does beg the question, Are the colours you see really real? Thank you.